We have been beholden to a venomous fabrication of our embellished lives that has started with those little unscrupulous lies that drip dry droppings of seeded untruths, while planting those in-between lies, lined and covered with a stale stench of muck and manure, leaving open the cracks and crevices for those oppressive lies that we keep slipping and sliding in, while continuing to fertilize all other lies that create the great white lie.
Affecting our families, it's affecting our communities, relationships, all as a whole, until we learn how to reconnect to the source. With that, as you see in my title, the reconnection theory, the X, is very key. The X is the majestic letter. It symbolizes a genetic crossing of different civilizations or humankind through the Godfather's sword. And this letter, a lot of times in Egyptian letters, they have different meanings and different symbolisms. And oftentimes we see the letter X as Malcolm X, Generation X, that represent a society, a culture of people. With my title, I'm wanting to connect us back to our source. And a lot of times, a lot of us have been disconnected and feel like we're disassociated from the original being. And it's about bringing us back together and uniting not only spiritually, but with our physical beings and how we can come back together to bring the source back to us. The reconnection theory overall is how we can reconnect as a civilization through generations that have been disconnected from our original source of being. And that is my purpose of educating through my work with children, through my work with psychotherapy. However, a lot of it comes back to knowing who we are, where we came from, our original source of being. And I'm doing a lot of work with the youth. This is a concern. A lot of people say, where do we start? How do we move forward? Some of us are already stuck in our ways, so where do we go? A lot of times I say we need to go back to the youth, bring them up, teach them about who they are, where they come from, because a lot of times in our society, they're not getting. We're assuming they're getting a lot of information, but if we're not bringing it to them, they're not going to get it, and they are being led to a lot of false assumptions.
You haven't come and checked on your
Understanding what the original source of being is, and that's a lot that we have to do as a community to re-educate our community, is understanding. Originally, we did not begin as slaves. We are a population of people that came kings, queens, we had civilizations that we built, that we strive upon. And now we have lost a lot of our history, our sense of history, where we came from, and what we are built upon, until we go back as far as bringing Sankofa, bringing things forward to the present. We are not going to be able to move forward as a culture until we really truly understand where we came from and linking the past to the present. A lot of times when we talk about culture and our origins, yes, it did start before slavery. And a lot of times that's not what's getting taught in schools. That's not what we're teaching our youth. And even in the youth, they're not even really getting the whole history of slavery, the origins, and how we overcame it also. So within that, we have to understand within our source that where we actually began from. And a lot of times we are not understanding that in order to know how to move forward. When we talk about a disconnection, one of the things I go back and I talk to a lot of my elders, I talk to people in the community and try to figure out where did things start becoming disconnected? Where did this all start? And going back, slavery was a major effect on how we are today. It disrupted a lot of our being, our origins, and where we're trying to move forward to. And as you see, the definition is submission to a dominating influence. And one thing I like to emphasize, how can we grow as a culture if we don't understand where we came from, but more or less, if we're being taught by a society of people that is not our original fortune of being, then it causes confusion. As a licensed therapist, a lot of things that I deal with in working with our population, our youth, and our culture, is a lot of misdiagnosis that we have of African Americans. I want to talk a little bit and incorporate a lot of with the mental health. I really don't feel like a lot of us have mental health issues. Some of it I think is imbalances in the mind, body, and spirit. We came from a culture of people, when we have certain issues, we never actually went to a psychotherapist or a mental health therapist. We would go to our churches, we would go to our elders. So now we're living in a society that anytime we're thinking differently, we act differently, or we handle things differently, they want to put a label on us. Now you see a lot of our youth being diagnosed with ADHD. You're seeing a lot of people being diagnosed with bipolar, anxiety, stress disorders. A lot of these disorders that we are dealing with are not necessarily all a medical or a mental condition, but it could be a way of life. And going into that, we as African Americans, I'm pretty sure everybody's heard of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that a lot of military vets or people that suffered a trauma of some sort have dealt with the after effects of this life-threatening event. But African Americans, many of us are dealing with PTSD slavery. A lot of the diagnosis that you get with PTSD or the symptoms or the effects, you're dealing with fear, flashbacks, anxiety, hyperarousal, easy to get agitated, easy to act in anger, paranoia. Really and truly, most of us as African Americans, particularly our African American males, are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. And then people want to say, well, what's wrong with you? Other cultures look at us and define us by our mannerisms. This was something that really bothered me working within the school systems with our youth. We are very creative, we're very active, we're very animated. When we get upset, we talk with our kids, we move a lot, we get loud, and then it's intimidating in some other cultures because that's not how they communicate. And then the first thing you want to see is there's a label with being oppositional, defiant, mood disorders, and things of that nature. A lot of this is coming from society. A lack of ability to deal with day-to-day coping mechanisms in a healthy way. And a lot of those mechanisms that's being taught is being taught from another culture who have learned to deal with these same issues in a different way than our culture. So coming back with that, as I talk about the whole reconnection, is reconnecting with a way of life that resonates within us, within our community, and not with another culture. Because if not, that's what's going to cause disease, that's what's going to cause distress, because that is not what resonates within our culture, within our genetic DNA makeup from that. So understanding that as you have family children that are in the schools and are dealing with that, you really want to keep an open mind to who's helping that child, what perspective, what theory are they dealing with. Because if someone in today's time is dealing with a lot of issues in society, you want to make sure they get the right foundation to grow off of. Otherwise, it can cause more of an imbalance as they develop through their different maturity levels and stages. So moving on, talking about the effect of PTSD that we occurred through slavery, is understanding how this disconnect is affecting our culture and the society that we live in at this present time. This disconnect is tearing us apart, and if we as a community do not come together anytime soon, we are going to be leading up to a lot of genocide to a certain amount. We got to think about this whole disconnect through slavery and the miseducation. First, the education system. We have got to take back the power of educating our own. If you can't do it,